na sa isang tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, lalo sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, 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 tsunami. Kapag sa ilalim ng Kapag sa ilalim ng dagat nagmula ang lindol, tubig dagat bababa, ito'y uurong. Pagbalik maririnig malakas na ugong, manilikay dambuhala, sunod-sunod na alon. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, plano sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, lalo sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, 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 tsunami. Kapag sa ilalim ng dagat nagmula ang lindol. Tubig dagat, bababa, ito'y uurong. Pagbalik maririnig, malakas na ugong. Malilikay dambuhala, sunod-sunod na alon. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, plano sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, lalo sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, 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 tsunami. Kapag sa ilalim ng dagat, nagmula ang lindol. Tubig dagat, bababa, ito'y uurong. Pagbalik maririnig, malakas na ugong. Malilikay dambuhala, sunod-sunod na alon. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, plano sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, lalo sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, 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 tsunami. sa ilalim ng dagat, nagmula ang lindol. Tubig dagat, bababa, ito'y uurong. Pagbalik maririnig, malakas na ugong. Malilikay dambuhala, sunod-sunod na alon. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, plano sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, lalo sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, 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 tsunami. Kapag sa ilalim ng dagat, nagmula ang lindol. Tubig dagat, bababa, ito'y uurong. Pagbalik maririnig, malakas na ugong. Malilikay dambuhala, sunod-sunod na alon. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, plano sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, lalo sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, 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 tsunami. Pag sa ilalim ng dagat nagmula ang lindol, tubig dagat bababa, ito'y uurong. Pagbalik maririnig malakas na ugong, malilikay dambuhala, sunod-sunod na alon. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, plano sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, lalo sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, 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 tsunami.
Good morning to all of you. And I'm Maylene Martinez Villegas, Chief Science Research Specialist of the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology. And welcome po. Welcome to the InfoSentro sa PHIVOLCS with today's theme, Tsunami Awareness, Community Preparedness, and Proper Response in the New Normal. And before anything else, we would like to acknowledge the presence of many friends, our guests for this morning. Our friends from the local DRR offices na nandito po ngayon, ang ating po mga estudyante, ang mga guro, and our partners. We have with us this morning JICA Philippines, from the JICA Philippines office, Ms. Ichiro Mototani, and of course, various DOST regional offices from Region 10, 9, 2, and CR. I saw them kanina po. And also some DOST agencies like SCII, nandito na po. And even MGB and DPWH. So maraming salamat po. But of course, we would like to also acknowledge the presence of some of our friends from the media. Andito na po ang UNTV, News 5, FEBC, and we are waiting for some more. So maraming salamat po for coming. This morning's program, maikli lang po. We will give you a brief background about World Tsunami Awareness Day, and then our guest, of course, Yusek Solidum, will talk about our programs. And the most exciting part, meron po tayong pa-contest, and ngayon po natin na-announce sa mga winners. Reminder lang po, before we begin, the typical announcements about netiquette. If you haven't changed, kindly rename po your username following po yung format na to. first your affiliation and then yung full name para po ma-recognize namin kayo. The way to change it, punta lang po kayo dun sa, pag nakikita nyo yung inyong image sa screen, and then click po yung sa inyo na image, and then makikita nyo po yung sa participants, and then you just have to type in your name if you to change. And we also would like to request if you can fill out the attendance. Pinopost pa nila sa chat box so you can see it. And just click that so that we can have your attendance, names na nakalista po sa attendance. And at the end of this morning's presentations, we would like to request also for your evaluation, as this is part of our standard way to make sure that we keep on improving the way we deliver our services to you. So, paki-fill out lang po. So, yun po. Ibabalik po natin yung isang slide. Okay. Today, we are one with all other countries in the observance of the World Tsunami Awareness Day for 2020, or simply we call it WITAD sa atin po dito sa Pilipinas. And for a brief background, in December of 2015, the United Nations General Assembly actually designated today, November 5, as the World Tsunami Awareness Day to promote the global culture of tsunami awareness. And it's actually, the date was chosen in celebration of and in honor of a Japanese story, Inamura no Hi, which means burning of the rice sheaves. During which in 1854, may isang farmer po who saw the tide receding as a sign of a tsunami coming. And so he set fire his entire harvest to warn the villagers. So yun po yung pinag-umpisahan kung bakit 5 November sa mga nagtataka po. So what have we done? Since 2016, the Philippines have participated in various activities to commemorate this event. And during 2016, the first time we did it, we actually held an open house and invited students to attend the talks about tsunami and visit our exhibit area. So ito po yung naganap. We always open our doors to students and teachers. Kaya po welcome po kayo lahat nung time po na wala pang pandemic. But now, we can always request for materials and have access to webinars like this. In 2017, we actually moved this time to Zambales, and in partnership with the local provincial government of Zambales and DepEd, we held an exhibit and a series of lectures again for students. And we even had a guest, our longtime partner from JICA Philippines office. We had Miss Erica Inoue that time, during which she shared their experience during the 2011 tsunami. And in 2018, we partnered this time with the City of Parañaque and DOST-NCR for tsunami orientation and exhibit for students and teachers in the Parañaque City. And last year, lipat na naman kami, we went to Mindoro to commemorate together yung 25th year of the 1994 November Oriental Mindoro earthquake and tsunami. We partnered with the Provincial Office of Oriental Mindoro and the City of Calapan, and we actually unveiled tsunami signage and did exhibit as well as lecture series. So this year, we lined up a series of activities to commemorate World Tsunami Awareness Day. And this morning, yan po yung kick-off natin. We'll be having the InfoSentro. And this afternoon, there will be a PHIVOLCS InfoBeat, wherein one of our geologists will talk about tsunami hazards and risks in the Philippines. And tomorrow morning, we will have another InfoBeat, preparedness naman po, tsunami preparedness and proper response. So ito po yan, tomorrow. Sana po ay makasama rin po namin kayo. And Yusek Solidum, our speaker for this morning, will also have another lecture on November 10. Ang scenario po ng National Simultaneous Earthquake Drill ay tungkol pa din po sa tsunami. So, we are very, very happy to have with us this morning, of course, the head of PHIVOLCS and the Undersecretary of DOST, Yusek Renato Yusilidum, to talk about DOST-PHIVOLCS Tsunami Disaster Risk Reduction Program. And later on, we will announce the winners for the contest. Sir?
Thank you, Mylene. Let me share a presentation with you. As we all know, the Philippines is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, where many large earthquake events have occurred and have triggered tsunami. The latest large magnitude tsunami occurred in Japan in 2011. We are familiar with many of these earthquake events, and earthquakes in the Philippines are so numerous. We record more than 5,000 earthquakes per year, and in the past 400 years, 100 plus earthquakes became destructive, some of which were generated offshore, nasa karagatan, and generated tsunami waves. Many people are familiar with the effects of earthquakes, especially with the occurrence of earthquakes in the past years, including those that occurred in southern Philippines in Cotabato and Davao del Sur provinces. Many are familiar with the rupture of the ground because the faults would break the surface if it's triggering large magnitude earthquake events. But most of the hazards that people would feel would be related to the strong shaking of the ground that would cause the collapses of houses and buildings. Or sometimes soft ground will behave like quicksand and liquefy. We are also familiar with the landslides triggered by earthquake events. Sometimes strong shaking will be followed by fire. However, not many areas in the Philippines have been recently affected by tsunami. But if we recall, in the past large earthquake events, way back in 1976, a magnitude 8.1 earthquake occurred in Celebes, in particular the Moro Gulf, and triggered a tsunami as high as 9 meters. And the first wave arrived in the coastline 2 to 5 minutes after the earthquake. And this devastated southwestern Mindanao. In 1994, a magnitude 7.1 earthquake occurred in Mindoro, and most likely triggered a submarine landslide that caused a tsunami 5 minutes after the earthquake, and the height of the tsunami was as high as 8 meters. Tsunamis arrive very fast in the Philippines, and we need to prepare for this. What are tsunamis? Tsunamis are essentially waves, can be small to sometimes large, resulting from the disturbance. Nadidisturbo po yung tubig, the seawater by under the sea earthquakes, landslides, volcanic eruptions, and sometimes meteor impact. It can drown people. It can actually devastate agricultural land near the shore. Water supply is affected because salt water would intrude. This would carry big things like ships, boulders that can impact people and destroy houses. Tsunamis are generated by most often by large earthquake events, and these are associated with the uplift or vertical motion of the seafloor. The figure on the top left would show you that when there is an earthquake associated with the movement of the ocean floor, the water will also rise, and essentially, the shoreline water will recede towards the center of the ocean, and people would notice it as a sudden drop, and eventually this would go back. Sometimes earthquakes are associated with landslides, nearshore landslides or offshore landslides. And this has happened also in the Philippines. In some cases, tsunamis are associated or generated by volcanic eruptions. In the Philippines, volcanic tsunamis have been generated in Taal volcano because it is surrounded by Taal Lake. Another large uh, tsunami can be generated by meteor impact o pagbagsak ng bulalakaw, but these are very uncommon. So our focus would be earthquake-generated tsunamis and landslide-generated tsunamis as a consequence. So we need to find out which areas in the Philippines are prone to tsunami and why. Where are these earthquake generators that would cause a tsunami? If you look at a map of the Philippines, we subdivide earthquake generators into two main groups. The first is what we call trenches. Trenches are where big blocks of the ocean or rocks would dive beneath the Philippines, and where they start to dive, it is called a trench. These are long and narrow depression in the ocean. And just for info, the second deepest part of the ocean in the world is the Mindanao Deep offshore of Surigao, which is part of the Philippine Trench. Trenches are shown there as white lines with teeth marks. So on the eastern side, we have the East Luzon and Philippine Trench. On the western side, we have the Manila, Negros, Sulu trenches. And on the southern side, we have the Cotabato Trench. However, because of the collision of ocean blocks on both sides of the country, the archipelago is weakened and active faults are generated. These are shown as red lines. And some of these active faults would actually extend or occur offshore. And when these would move, they can also generate tsunamis in the inland seas. So let me show you where the trenches are. Trenches are demarcated by the lines with teeth marks. Shown on the right side of the cartoon would be a blue-colored space. It's called the Philippine Sea. And the Philippine Sea would dive towards the west along the East Luzon and Philippine trenches, while those green-colored part, which would cover the West Philippine Sea, Sulu Sea, and Celebes Sea, would dive beneath the western Philippines towards the east. And on the southern side, we have in Mindanao another trench, but actually does not appear in Mindanao, but in Indonesia, part of the Molucca Sea plate, where the plate is found. The subduction or diving of the plate starts in the Sadia Trench. So the trenches are where large earthquakes are generated and tsunamis can be generated. So you can see we are the only country, the Philippines is the only country where trenches would be found on both sides of the country. And hence, both sides of the country would need to prepare for tsunamis. Aside from that, the eastern side of the country faces the Pacific Ocean or the circum-Pacific Ring of Fire, where earthquakes and tsunamis can also be generated and which can arrive in the Philippines. Why is it important to prepare for earthquakes and tsunamis? We have seen the devastation and impacts of COVID-19, and these are shown as impacts in underline, like life loss with the diseases, the interruption of public and other services, the social disruption of families, individuals, and businesses because of mobility restriction, quarantine, and we see disruption of our economic development. And people are displaced when they cannot move or when they are quarantined outside of their houses. But if there are large earthquakes and tsunamis, we will be able to see far more devastating impacts beyond COVID-19. Because now we will see the physical impacts to buildings, infrastructures, properties, equipment, impact to water supply like pipes, electrical supply, communication systems like towers will be affected, roads, bridges, ports, rails can be affected. In addition to the physical impact to people because of the collapsing houses or to the impact of the large volume of water carrying with it with the debris. Hence, the impact to our economic development will be very, very large. What we need to do is prepare for the tsunami. And a tsunami risk reduction program, which is being followed by PHIVOLCS, addresses four goals. First goal is to understand the tsunami and manage the hazard and the risk or the potential loss that it will bring. And the priority actions would cover the following. And 1.3 to 1.1 to 1.3 there is covered by PHIVOLCS. Tsunami hazard mapping and modeling, tsunami hazard and risk assessment, essentially knowing which areas will be affected and what will happen to the people, to the communities in the danger zone. The third is being supported by PHIVOLCS through development of science, technology, and innovation, information, and services so that other government organizations, the communities, and the public will be able to prepare and reduce the potential harm that tsunamis will inflict. 1.4 tsunami response and recovery is not handled by DOST but by other agencies, but we have some application, mobile application, that can help in the response and recovery. Goal number 2 is to detect the possible occurrence of an earthquake and a tsunami, and then warn and disseminate the information. And that is covered in 2.1, monitoring and detection network development. 2.2 is early warning systems, where other levels of society would need to also pitch in, and development of tsunami alerts and warnings. More importantly, we have to make sure that at the various levels of our society, tsunami preparedness is enhanced so that there will be effective community response. And this would need public education. That is why the World Tsunami Awareness Day is a very important initiative globally to educate the public not only about the hazards of a tsunami, but more importantly, how to prepare for it. And with increased awareness by the community, we hope that this will also enable people to work together and Filipinos of this Bayanihan spirit so that the community will be prepared. It is not simply an individual preparedness, but a community preparedness. We need each other to prepare and respond in case there will be a tsunami. Lastly, goal number 4 is we need to have continuous international coordination and cooperation. And I'm very happy to note that one of our partner organizations, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, is represented here in this activity. Let me give you some idea of what we are doing in terms of understanding tsunami hazards and the potential risk. In this part, I will tell you which areas in the Philippines are prone to tsunami. I will also show you the simulation in different parts of the Philippines, how fast the arrival of the tsunami will be, and the likely height of the tsunami. And third, provide you with an idea of the number of people exposed to tsunami hazards in the Philippines. If you look at the tsunami-prone area map of the Philippines shown in the left, you will note there that there are different colors. The different colors would tell you that certain areas in the Philippines can be affected either by only local tsunami or both by local tsunami and distant tsunami. What is a local tsunami? Local or near-field tsunami are those that are generated within the Philippines, its boundary. And because there are trenches bounding the Philippines, trenches would generate the local tsunami. Or if there are offshore faults, when they move, they can generate a tsunami. They can also be considered as a threat. So the red lines there would show you coastal areas prone to both local and distant tsunami. That will be on the eastern side of the Philippines. The yellow-colored coastline there will be those affected by local tsunami because they are in front of trenches. Those blue-colored coastlines there will be affected by local tsunami because of offshore faults or submarine landslide. So, what is important in these two types of tsunami? A local tsunami will have a lead time after the occurrence of an earthquake of most likely 2 to 10 minutes if the shoreline is near the epicenter, maybe up to an hour if it is further away. If it's a distant tsunami generated outside of the Philippines, we will have more than 1 hour if it's like in Taiwan, or maybe 3 to 4 hours if it's in Japan, to 26 hours if it's in Chile. So there is enough lead time for a distant or far-field tsunami, but this might not be enough if communities do not know what to do if they are not prepared. More so, preparedness is very important because rapid response is needed for locally generated tsunami. What have we done? Since the earthquake function has been transferred to PHIVOLCS, and starting in 2003, we really have focused on uh, mapping which areas will be affected by tsunami. So we have produced various maps. We have produced the indicative map showing the coastal areas that are prone to various types of tsunami. We have prepared at the province and municipal level 1 is to 50,000 scale maps, and more detailed maps 1 is to 10,000 in cities. In particular, in Metro Manila, we have a 1 is to 5,000 scale map where you can actually see very clearly the different barangays in Metro Manila, and will also show you the potential heights of tsunami in various places. We are also conducting tsunami modeling. Shown on the left is a model of a magnitude 8.3 earthquake generated tsunami. And you would notice that on the top left, you would see the number of minutes in red, the number of minutes it will take for a tsunami to arrive in the coastline. For example, if our reference is the political boundary of Metro Manila, it will take maybe 1 to 1.5 hours before the tsunami would arrive in the coastal boundary of Manila, Metro Manila, depending on where the tsunami would start. The height of the tsunami in Metro Manila can be up to close to 6 meters, and shown on the map would be how far inland the tsunami will flood many areas in the Philippines. We have developed many programs to further refine the potential tsunamis in the Philippines. But what is important is we first need to know how strong the earthquakes are if this would occur offshore. We need to evaluate the potential of large earthquakes and possible tsunami generation in offshore areas of the Philippines. We do this by conducting active fault mapping in offshore areas through geophysical methods, and also looking at uplifted coastal terraces, especially corals, that would tell us how large the earthquakes are and how large the vertical movement that are associated with large earthquakes offshore. These are important, and we will continue to do this. We also have developed a hazards and risk assessment software called REDAS, and this would have various algorithms or functions. The first is to assess the potential earthquake hazard, and also it has a module on tsunami simulation. So you can simulate any earthquake and the possible tsunami that it can produce in various parts of the Philippines. Second is it has exposure data algorithm. It can store locations, descriptions of houses and buildings, and even the number of people, so that when we try to assess the potential impact of an earthquake or a tsunami, we will be able to do so. That is why in the third module, we have impact assessments for earthquake, also for tsunami, and just for information, we also have impact assessment modules for flood and strong wind. Let me show you some of the tsunami simulations, starting from the eastern side of the Philippines to the western side and down south. For example, if there's a magnitude 8.5 earthquake in the East Luzon Trench, you would see that some areas will be affected in a few minutes with various heights. So in the next series of slides, I will show you the different simulations, and we'll show you also the calculated heights at the coast and the number of minutes it will take for the tsunami to arrive. So in this scenario from the East Luzon graph, shown will be the calculation points, the names of the calculation points, the heights of the tsunami in the coast, and the arrival time. In summary, you would note that as high as close to 16 meters uh, of tsunami, and usually less than 15 minutes, sometimes as early as 3 minutes arrival time would be calculated. And the further away, like for example, uh, the Jose Panganiban Camarines Norte calculation point, because it's too far, it will take around 42 minutes. In essence, the closer to the source of the tsunami, the faster the arrival time, and the heights can also be amplified. So any tsunami more than 1 meter can be devastating. If we now go to the Bicol area, if there's a magnitude 8.3 earthquake, you would see that in a few minutes, the different places in Bicol and the Visayas will be affected. So if we look at the potential heights, there can be as high as 10 meters in Camarines, 6 meters in Legazpi, with the arrival time of usually less than 10 minutes. Further away, again, it may take more than 30 minutes to 1 hour. If we now move on to northeastern Mindanao in the Surigao area, if there's a magnitude 8.2 earthquake, tsunami will cause the tsunami as high as 13 meters and typically more than 4 meters. The arrival time is between 4 to 25 minutes. If we now move on further down south in eastern Mindanao, in the Davao Oriental area, the Davao del Sur area, if there's a magnitude 8.5 earthquake, a tsunami can be generated that will produce tsunamis as high as 14 meters, with the arrival time as early as 3 minutes up to 20 minutes. If we now move to the western Luzon side, for a magnitude 8.4 earthquake, there will be tsunamis affecting the Batanes area down to the coastlines of western Luzon, Mindoro, and Palawan. But of course, the further away, the smaller the tsunami will be. In this scenario, we see that as high as 15-meter waves will be produced, and the arrival time is as early as 2 meters up to 15 minutes. Moving close to Metro Manila, if the earthquake will be offshore of Bataan and Zambales, and with a magnitude 8.3 earthquake, you would see that most of the coastal communities near the epicenter will be affected in a few minutes and would be affecting Metro Manila, like here in the Sangli Point, Cavite, after 1 hour. The projected heights and arrival times are shown on this table, again, as high as 15 meters and more than 1 meter in many places. The earliest arrival time will be 3 minutes in several places, up to less than 15 minutes. The difference is in Metro Manila because we are inside a bay which is further out from the trend. So we have enough time in Metro Manila before the arrival of the tsunami after the earthquake. If we now move on to Visayas, we will see that if there is a magnitude 8.2 earthquake, Panay Island, Negros Island, and southwestern Mindanao will be affected. The projected heights are shown again. It's more than 2 meters, up to 11 meters, and the arrival time is very fast, 3 minutes, 12 minutes, and further away, further inland, like for example in San Enriquez, Negros Oriental, because it's further inland, it will be a little bit longer. If we now move into the Zamboanga Peninsula, if there's a magnitude 8 earthquake in the Sulu Trench, then we will be able to see tsunamis affecting, again, the Visayas, Zamboanga Peninsula, and even eastern Palawan. Okay? And in 1897, September 21, an earthquake of such a magnitude occurred and tsunamis affected Zamboanga Peninsula up to 6 meters, eastern Palawan by 2 meters, and even parts of the Visayas, and even reached Borneo. And here are the projected heights of up to close to 10 meters in Baliguan, Zamboanga del Norte. Zamboanga City would be around 4 meters, and the arrival time is very fast, 2 minutes to 15 minutes. Further away, though, from the site will be longer. Lastly, if there will be a repeat of a strong earthquake of 1976 in the Moro Gulf, like a magnitude 8.1 earthquake, we will see the effect in the Moro Gulf and southwestern Mindanao. We expect tsunami to arrive in 2 minutes or earlier, 2 minutes or earlier, maybe 1 minute, depending on where the position of the earthquake and tsunami will be. And the heights will be up to 13 meters and very short lead time. Why is it very short? Because the Cotabato Trench is very close to the shoreline. So, ladies and gentlemen, tsunamis in the Philippines can move very fast simply because the trenches are closer to our shoreline. And because of this restriction, we need to make sure that people are really, really ready so that if ever there are signs of a possible tsunami, they need to react right away. So, how do we actually share these various hazards and potential impact information to people? DOST-PHIVOLCS developed the GeoRisk Philippines platform, where there are various applications through mobile gadgets or computers. The first is how to map out all the houses, buildings, and anything on the surface in the Philippines. We have developed the GeoMapper, which we actually launched last July. And this is to develop the what we call exposure data so that we would know right away who can be affected, and we can monitor the effects of the disaster immediately after by going back to the same area or people reporting to us what happened to their places. The second is the geoanalytics. It helps local government, national agencies to visualize and assess the impacts of various hazards. And the hazards assessment aspect is facilitated through the Hazard Hunter Philippines, where hazards assessment is at your fingertips and you can get a multi-hazards assessment in less than 1 minute. For example, in the Hazard Hunter Philippines, if you double tap your finger on a point, you'll be able to know the various hazards immediately. When the hazards will become red, that is the hazard that the community will prepare. It provides you an assessment report and recommended actions. If you're interested, it will also provide you the distance to the nearest critical facility, like hospitals and schools, so that you'll be able to know if the same schools or hospitals that you may need will also be affected. Hazard Hunter can also give you a more detailed tsunami hazards assessment because it can provide you a more detailed map showing you the different areas that will be affected by different tsunami heights. It is color-coded, indicating areas prone to various tsunami heights. The geoanalytics PH, on the other hand, will also be able to provide you as a local government, as a national agency, an idea of, for example, how many people are exposed. In this example, we are looking at Barangay Central in Mati, Davao Oriental, and here we see that around 6,040 or 17% of the population can be affected by the tsunami. We can subdivide the affected population according to their ages and according to the gender. So, given these hazards assessment simulations in the Philippines, what would be the total population of people in the Philippines exposed to tsunami? Shown on the table are the various regions, including NCR. And if we sum these up, the total population exposed to tsunami would be close to 14 million. But they will not be affected at the same time. It would depend on where the tsunami would occur. In NCR, for example, the prone population would be around 2.5 2.4 million. The next highest there will be around 1.6 million in Region 7, 1.2 million in Region 6, and Region 4A around 1 million. If we now focus our attention in Metro Manila, and similar to other assessments, we can provide you with the exposure per province, per town, and can also be done per barangay. So for example, in Metro Manila, on the left is a map of Metro Manila, and in the middle is a table of the population exposed in various cities like Manila, Pasay, Navotas, Malabon, Parañaque, Las Piñas, Caloocan, Valenzuela, and Makati, cities in Metro Manila that have coastal areas, and these can be subdivided into male or female. Again, as mentioned, the total exposure of population in Metro Manila is 2.4 million people. If we talk about buildings of various uses, on the right is a table showing you the building use and the number of structures exposed to tsunami. The total is close to 300,000 structures. Now, if for example, there is a disaster that has happened, we have a tool, part of GeoMapper, called Situation Data Mapper, where you can report a disaster. In fact, we are asking people, because of the recent tropical cyclone, Super Typhoon Rolly, because of strong wind, flood, and the lahar that it has produced, for crowdsourcing so that people can report a disaster. And this will be used henceforth for all types of disaster. The first survey is a very general survey where people can report the hazard or the disaster that has happened. They can post pictures and videos and can type and describe the impacts. If they're interested, after conducting the general survey, they can also fill up more detailed survey so that it can help us in refining our assessment tool for possible impacts related to strong wind, flood, and even lahar, so that in the next future events, we can improve the forecasted impacts. But this is for tsunami, for volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, typhoons, landslides, sinkholes, and other hazards. The URL is there. The link is there. We're developing the URL, hopefully within the week, so that people can easily access this and report the disasters to us. How about the second need? The second goal is tsunami detection, warning, and dissemination. This will be very brief. I will share with you what we have done so far in terms of monitoring and alerting. Essentially, we need earthquake detection and sea level detection so that we can monitor the possible tsunami occurrences within the Philippines and those tsunamis coming from other countries within the Pacific. We also need to make sure that people understand that there must be community-based warning by using natural science. Right now, we have 107 seismic stations all over the country. The 107th station was recently launched or operated last week. And shown on the right would be our data receiving center for data for earthquake and tsunami. Shown in the middle would be an unmanned station, which has a satellite communication. We will continue to develop more stations, set up in more areas so that we can have better and faster location of earthquake events. In terms of sea level monitoring network, we now have 29 tsunami real-time tide gauges, 19 of which would be through the help of JICA. And by the way, for the earthquake stations, we also have been assisted by JICA in some of these stations. And this will ensure that the information for earthquake and tsunami that is happening in the Philippines can also be shared with other countries, because the protection of one country can mean the protection of others, because tsunamis can cross political boundaries. Community tsunami detection and warning systems are developed in areas with bays, where we put up sea level gauges and warning sirens that would also enable the local government to sound the alarm in case they see the sign of a possible tsunami. In the Philippines, we use a simple tsunami information or warning scheme. We will evacuate once the tsunami information is categorized as tsunami warning. We expect a destructive tsunami of more than 1 meter, and this would need immediate evacuation of coastal areas. Boats at sea are advised to stay offshore in deep waters. If, if it's a local tsunami, and we think that the magnitude is large enough, and we don't have enough time, and it can generate more than 1 meter tsunami, we will issue immediately a tsunami warning. However, for distant tsunamis, where we might have enough time, if there is a large earthquake event, we can declare an advisory of no tsunami threat if we're sure that there will be no tsunami, or an advisory that we will say that we are monitoring the sea level so that the tsunamis affecting other countries we can monitor from the data receiving center of PHIVOLCS and assess whether this will affect the Philippines. If we think that the tsunamis generated in other countries will not affect the Philippines, we will issue a no tsunami threat. However, if the tsunami from other countries will cause waves of less than 1 meter, this is still destructive for those very near the coast. Hence, people will be advised to stay away from the coast. People with houses very near the beach will be advised to move inland by a few meters, and boats at sea are advised to stay offshore in deep waters. However, as mentioned, local tsunamis can be very fast. We need to tell people that there are natural signs of an impending local tsunami. And these three signs can be remembered through three words: shake, drop, and roar. Shake, the strong earthquake, malakas na lindol. Drop, usually the water would recede fast. Sometimes it's rise, but typically it's drop. A third is the unusual sound of the returning wave, the tsunami. So we call it a roar. So shake, drop, and roar. People should immediately move inland or go to tall, strong buildings in case they feel a strong earthquake, or when they now see a sudden drop of seawater after the shaking. If they have not moved at all, once they hear the tsunami, the unusual sound, there might not be enough time. They really need to respond immediately. Given the hazard assessment, given the monitoring that will be provided, the information will be provided to them, we have to make sure, though, that communities know what to do. Because this is the most important part. We need to enhance the preparedness and effective response of the community. DOST-PHIVOLCS have produced guidelines for earthquake and tsunami. These are also available on the website, and we have been distributing this. We have also developed other information materials like posters and comics, and a guide to develop a tsunami prepared already community. These are also available. In the social media, of course, we develop social media cards for people to understand what tsunamis and earthquakes are. What is important, though, is to enable the community to have a community-based early warning for tsunami, and they conduct tsunami preparedness planning and drills. These would essentially contain the following activities: development of evacuation plans based on the hazard maps, the installation of different types of signage, signage for hazard, signage for the evacuation area, signage for the direction to go to the evacuation area, the conduct of seminars and lectures, and lastly, the drills. This is being done. For example, PHIVOLCS developed a tsunami signage where the symbol of a hazard, a refuge site or evacuation site, and the direction is denoted. And typically, we want a local dialect to explain the sign and an English subtitle so that foreigners or those who do not know the local dialect would be able to understand. Okay, so we have a hazard-prone signage, directional signage, and evacuation site signage. We have done many pilot areas for establishment of community-based early warning system together with national organizations. These are shown on the left, but mostly with local governments, which are shown on the right. But notice that there are still many blank spaces, and we need the local government and the community themselves to have these preparedness activities. Lastly, we also have developed a teaching and learning guide for teachers. We have a guidebook for communicating volcano, earthquake, and tsunami impacts and preparedness for DepEd elementary teachers, for high school science teachers, and for disaster risk reduction focal persons of DepEd. We have been conducting training for teachers and local governments lately. International cooperation and coordination. To strengthen our tsunami warning, preparedness, and emergency response, we continue to collaborate and coordinate with many organizations like UNESCO, Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, the International Tsunami Information Center, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center based in Hawaii, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, Japan Meteorological Agency, the Regional Integrated Multi-Hazard Early Warning System based in Bangkok. We actually assisted them in the development of the center. And we coordinate with various tsunami advisory centers as part of the Pacific Tsunami Warning System, which are based in the Pacific, in Hawaii, in Japan, and China. And lastly, we work together with the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. The World Tsunami Day commemoration is an important part of our international collaboration and also education campaign. We have a digital poster making contest and a slogan making contest this October. And today we will announce the winner. And as mentioned by Dr. Villegas, we have various activities for the World Tsunami Awareness Day. Ladies and gentlemen, our country is prone to various hazards. We have seen the devastation from Super Typhoon Rolly and its impacts on houses because of the strong wind, the flooding and the lahar in many places. We need to make sure that we work together to overcome this. But most importantly, better if we are more prepared. We have science, technology, and innovation from DOST that can help in preparedness and disaster risk reduction. We need to use it, but we need to share this information to the communities and the public. And I'd like to thank the presence of our media partners, the disaster risk reduction and management officers, for attending this webinar so that we can make our country not only a place fun to live, but also a place where we can live safely despite the threats of nature. Maraming pong salamat sa inyong lahat.
Okay, thank you, Yusek Solidum, for a very, very detailed descriptions of our initiatives on Tsunami DRR. Before we proceed with the question and answer, which we will do a bit later, may we introduce, sir, a very short video on Tsunami Ready that was produced by the UN DRR. This is something that we worked with together with the UN and IOC. And sir,
Yes.
may we show the video?
Yeah, please go
Lucy?
ahead.
The Philippines is an archipelagic country. Many of its cities and towns are located along the coasts. In our estimate, around 10 million people are exposed to tsunami hazards. We have been using science, technology, and innovation coupled with community preparedness at the local level, from the city down to what we call the village or barangay level, so that people have an understanding of the hazards, the possible impacts, and the safe areas, so that they're able to develop a tsunami safe and tsunami ready community. Having this science-based information make people more realize that even though they have not experienced tsunami, that they can be affected by a tsunami. So what we're trying to do is combine both science, technology, innovation, and community work to make people better prepared. We need to make sure that people understand that their safety relies on their early action by providing them science-based information and making sure that we actually engage them and help them develop their own community preparedness and evacuation plan.
Lucy? Okay, thank you. That very short Tsunami Ready video is part of a set of videos produced by UNDRR and IOC for World Tsunami Awareness Day. And you can actually find this YouTube site ng UNDRR, or today, we will be actually posting that and sharing that sa FB po natin. So makukuha nyo na rin po if you'd like to have a copy. Together with today's presentations. So, sir, may we proceed now to the announcement of winners?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Okay, so I'm trying to find my slides. As part of the World Tsunami Awareness Celebration, one of the activities that we launched last September is what we call slogan and digital poster making. It's actually online because of the adjustments that we had to do. We posted this last September 25. We put up the announcement, and the entries was open until October 18. So ito po yung mga required na qualifications, criteria that we'll be using. So it's a full announcement that we made for a month. So actually, we received a total of 157 slogan entries and 76 poster entries. And we have a technical working group who did pre-screening. And so yung pong 157, na-limit na po sa 56 based on our screening. So, and yung 76 posters went down to 25. And this will be the ones that will go through the final judges assessment. And here sa process na to, the ranking of the pre-screened entries were conducted until we finally got the top 3 finalists. And yung top 3 finalists na yan, ang napunta sa final deliberation. And so yung final ranking dito na po ginawa. So actually, we would like to thank and acknowledge our panel of judges who worked with Yusek Saludum and myself and the technical working group for this. Dr. Paul Carson Alanis, Dr. Maria Leonila Bautista, Ms. Malu Del Rosario, Dr. Teresito Bacolcol, Dr. Arturo Daag, Mr. Ryan Rebadulia. Nandito po sila ngayon at nakikinig. I think they're just as curious as to finally who made it to the top 3 based on sa short list that they made. Maraming salamat po sa inyong oras at panahon for this. For a brief background, we had 157 registered entries for the slogan making contest. Mas marami po ang mga kababaihan, mga youth natin. This is actually participated in by our very young mga artists, and about 31% ng males from 33 provinces. Ito po yung nakakatuwa dito. Ang dami po nang nag-participate. Maraming salamat. And ito po yung age ranges nila from 12 to 17 years old. Now, ang criteria, syempre, 30% content, relevance to the theme, explanation in the video, 25% for style, 20% for clarity, and 15% for impact, and 10% for grammatical. It has to be error-free from grammatical errors and typos. And my prices, syempre, 5,000 for the first prize, 3,000 for the second, and 1,000 for the third prize. For the digital poster making contest, we received 76 registered entries, 44% males and 56% females from 25 provinces. Ito po ang breakdown ng age ranges natin dito. Pinakamadami pa din po, about 16 years old. And criteria, content, design, impact, and overall aesthetic, ng 15%. And prices po natin, third prize 3,000, 2,000 for the silver, and first prize po ay 17,000. Sir?
Yes.
May we request you, Sexolidum, to please do the honors to announce the winners.
Well, I'm very happy that there have been many entries, and the entries are very, very nice and very good. So it's really a close contest among the participants. So next slide will show you the winners. And the third prize would be on the slogan making contest. Has an entry, kahandaan at kaalaman, magkatuwang na kailangan upang tsunami mapagtagumpayan.
And the third prize.
The next frame, please. And the name of the third place winner is Princess Inomi Sisante from Imos Pilot Elementary School, Cavite Province. Congratulations, Princess. Next. Entry number 2, second place, has this. Maging alerto sa kapaligiran, lumayo sa dalampasigan, magkaisa't magtulungan, tsak tsunami malalagpasan. Next. And this entry was given by Hannah Grace G. Ondag from Adventist University of the Philippines, from Silang, Cavite Province. Oh, parehong taga Cavite, ang third and second placer. Next. First prize has an entry, Tsunami Wag Maliitin. Wastong impormasyon alamin. Babala ay sundin, paghahanda ugaliin. Next. And this entry was given by Trixie May D. Del Rosario of General Emilio Aguinaldo National High School, again, from Cavite, from Bacoor City in Cavite. So mga taga Cavite, mga Caviteño, 1, 2, and 3 po kayo sa slogan making contest. Next is the digital poster making contest winners. Next. This is the entry. For third place, we see in Hourglass with the title World Tsunami Awareness Day 2020. And on the left side of the hourglass would be activities that people would do. Listening, being educated, staying away from homes, getting to high ground, and being alert so that they can evacuate immediately. And on the right side is the tsunami and is being prevented. Next. This was submitted by Darlene Maris Sunglao from Tagbilaran City Science High School, Bohol Province. Congratulations. The second winner has this entry. No? You have a tsunami below and the coronavirus symbol, a boy with a mask with his go bag. And on the left side, you will have families listening, getting educated, getting alerted with planning. And on the right side would be the evacuation on elevated ground. So congratulations, very, very nice digital poster. This was submitted by Hannah Paula Ramirez from Santo Domingo National High School in Santo Domingo, Albay Province. Congratulations, Hannah.
Okay, so for the first prize,
For
wala
the
ba yung
first
drum
prize.
roll? Asan ang drum roll nyo? Wala.
The first prize has this entry. Okay? Because of the new normal, we have been attending webinars, being educated, being alerted through the social media. Tsunami on the left, we actually have a person on the right responding to the earthquake by doing the drop, cover, and hold. We are being alerted through various means, through cell phone, social media, and families evacuating with physical distancing, following the directional signage to an elevated ground. On the top right would be a siren sounding the alarm. So very, very nice poster as well. Congratulations. So the name of our first prize winner is Marianne Faith Aviso from Palo Leyte. So for the poster making contest, it came from various places, from Bohol, third place, second place from Albay, and first place from Leyte. Congratulations to all the winners. Thank you for your participation, and we hope that the slogan making and poster making contest helps in educating the public and making them more aware of tsunami and why we need to prepare for this.
Okay, congratulations to all the winners. Maraming salamat sa partisipasyon. Actually, nandito po sila. Nandyan po sa ating audience ngayon. Wala nga lang pong physical awarding. But we also would like to congratulate the parents and the guardians for supporting our students and the teachers, of course, for being here today. And again, salamat sa mga judges for taking the time to view all the entries 2 weeks ago. Okay, sir. Now
Hello.
we may proceed. Yes,
Hello,
Lucy.
Ma'am.
May video pala.
Yeah, we have a video for the entries, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Kapag sa ilalim ng dagat nagmula ang lindol, tubig dagat bababa, ito'y uurong. Pagbalik maririnig malakas na ugong, malilikay dambuhala, sunod-sunod na alon. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, plano sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Puwersa nito ay sobrang lakas, lampas 5 metro along hahampas. Kaya doon lumikas sa lugar na mataas, lalo sa paglikas, susi upang maging ligtas. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, tsunami, nariyan na sa isang isap. Tsunami, tsunami, kailangang maging maagap. Tsunami, 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 tsunami.
Any comments, sir?
Well, ako'y nagagala kasi napakaganda ng mga entry. The entries are very good. Mahirap piliin, both for the slogan making and digital poster making contest. And I hope that you are inspired by what you're doing, because right now we need the youth to really be part of the effort of our society to educate others so that we as a country will be safer and better prepared for these various disasters. Maraming pong salamat sa mga sumali, and of course to the parents and to the teachers who have guided these students and the youth who participated.
Okay, thank you, sir. Nakita nyo kung gaano kahalaga po ang boses ng ating mga kabataan. And I would like to request, I think, Miss Lucy, this short video of the entries will be posted sa YouTube channel natin, ano? Para ma-access naman ng mga kabataan na nag-submit ng entries nila so that they can see. We should be proud of the entries that they submitted kasi ang gaganda po. Maraming salamat po. Now, I think it's about time that we move on, sir, to our question and answer portion. We actually received a lot of questions na nakalista na dito, nasa kabilang screen. Okay na po, sir, magtanong?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, pwede pa po kayo mag-post ng questions nyo sa Zoom dito or sa FB po natin, naka-FB live po tayo. Hanggang nandito pa po si Yusek Solidum, hindi po naman siya alis agad. Dito sa Zoom, meron po tayong katanungan from Christian Auman, DepEd, Mandaue City. Good morning po. Tanong ko lang po, nagmamatter po ba ang depth ng earthquake para magka-generate ng tsunami? Gaano po kalalim ang hypocenter depth para makapag-generate ng tsunami?
Yes, a very good question. The depth of the tsunami that will matter would be dependent on the magnitude that the earthquake has. For a magnitude 7 earthquake, for it to really generate a tsunami, we consider less than 30 to 50 kilometers. Sometimes, if it's very large, close to magnitude 8 to 9, we now can have a tsunami even if the earthquake has a depth of around 70 kilometers. So the important thing is the ocean floor is lifted up so that the water above it can also be lifted. So if the earthquake is like 100 kilometers and it's a magnitude 7 and offshore, we usually don't worry about that earthquake generating a tsunami. It's already too deep.
Okay. Punta tayo sa FB, sir. I think it's related to that. Sabi po, tinatanong po ni Lexi Masiglat o CD Calabarzon. Question, how strong does an earthquake should be to be able to generate a tsunami? You kind of mentioned it earlier.
Yes, in the Philippines, based on our experience, yung experience po natin, may tsunami na ng magnitude 6.5, pero ito po ay maliliit lamang, no? And again, usually kasi, the displacement po ng trends or fault will actually give us an idea of what the magnitude is, no? So the larger the magnitude, the displacement will be bigger. So kung ang displacement ay vertical, then the larger the displacement of the water will be, the higher the tsunami will be. So magnitude 6.5 ang minimum na ginagamit namin.
Okay, thank you, sir. Magnitude 6.5 and siyempre depth po is very important. The shallower it is, and mas mataas ang displacement, mas malaking tsunami. Sir, next question from AUP Academy, Ergeline de la Cruz. Aside from earthquakes, are there any impending signs for us to know if there will be possible tsunami that might occur?
Yes, okay. Of course, the first sign is a tsunami. The second is the sudden drop of water. If you're near the coastline, kung nasa dalampasigan kayo, kapag biglang bumaba ang tubig, then that's a sure sign na may paparating na tsunami. Now, you have to be careful because you really need to have observed the sea, no? Kung before the earthquake, talaga mataas pa, and then suddenly after the earthquake bumaba, then that is okay. However, sometimes people mistake the retreat of seawater because of low tide as a sign after an earthquake. Kasi dahan-dahan po yun. And the tsunami will have to come back immediately in less than 30 minutes. Dapat may bumalik ng alon dyan if it's a tsunami. But if you have waited after an earthquake and you saw the water retreat and it's like 10 hours, 12 hours, low tide lang po yun. No? So you have to be careful of the sequence. And then the unusual sound of an incoming tsunami. That's the third sign.
Okay, thank you, sir. Natural signs, very important, lalo na po sa mga coastal communities. This one is from Bel Surara of DZEC Radio, Aguila, Net 25. May mga classifications or variations po ba ang tsunami? Prone ba ang Pilipinas sa tsunami? Why?
Okay.
Ano po ang factors na prone sa tsunami? Thank you.
Okay. Tsunamis can be generated by four processes. So sometimes they can be related to an earthquake event, can be associated with a submarine landslide, can be associated with a volcanic activity, or meteor impact. But in the Philippines, we classify this into two for warning purposes. Local tsunami, again, these are generated by earthquakes or landslides within the Philippines. And the arrival time is so fast, might be 1 minute, 2 minutes, typically less than 15 minutes. And the second type is the distant or far-field tsunami. These are tsunamis generated by earthquakes coming from other countries within the Pacific Ocean. There we have more than 1 hour lead time, up to 26 hours. So when it comes to response, then we can take it a little bit slower and more sure in terms of what can happen if it's really coming from the other side of the Pacific. The reason, obviously, is that we have a lot of faults and trenches, big faults offshore, that generate tsunami. That is why both the eastern and western shorelines of the country are prone to large tsunamis, and those in the middle, the inland coast, can still be affected by smaller tsunami waves because of fault movement or submarine landslides.
Okay, thank you. We have another question. This time it's from Camille Samante of News 5, sir. Are Filipino communities prepared for a tsunami? Gaano kahirap po when natural disasters strike during a pandemic?
Well, the preparedness of communities in the Philippines are not even. Marami pong mga naghahanda pero sa tsunami. Actually, this preparedness in some towns in eastern Philippines was tested when Super Typhoon Yolanda came. No? Prior po sa Super Typhoon Yolanda, we actually went to many places in eastern Philippines. Myself, Dr. Villegas, and many other staff of PHIVOLCS, because we see the threat of a large tsunami on their side. And we encourage them na magkaroon ng community tsunami preparedness. And of course, tsunami and storm surges are very similar, but storm surges, when you respond to it, you also need to worry about the strong wind. No? So, as I have shown you in one of my slides, there were communities already preparing for tsunami, but still we need to cover more. I'm glad, though, that there are other organizations that are doing this. In government, we have the Office of Civil Defense, DILG, also through their various agencies. They have focused on the eastern side of the Philippines, and many other international partners that also are assisting many communities. But we need to do more. Now, preparing for a tsunami and conducting community tsunami preparedness is a little bit difficult now during the COVID-19 pandemic because we are not able to really go down to the community and talk to people. Before, we actually go down to various communities and conduct lectures in the evening because coastal areas, you have many fishermen. In the evening or in the following day when they come. But we usually have an evening session so that all people who are working in the daytime can also attend. But on the other side, the pandemic has caused us to actually have more people listen all over the country because of the social media platform and webinars that we have. So we can actually reach more people in terms of information campaign. And we hope that the local government disaster managers will be able to do now the actual preparedness at the community level. We just finished a tsunami summit for Mindanao, disaster managers, DOST and OCD staff. Uh, and we will continue to do so in this summit. It was a month-long activity where we subdivided seminars on essentially what we will also be sharing with you in the next webinars, the hazards assessment and how to develop a community prepared, a tsunami prepared community.
Okay, thank you, sir. We still have a bunch of questions sa FB chat comment section. One is from Erica Mamag of DOST-NCR. Curious po if this, I think these are the simulations you showed earlier. Tsunami simulation data available to the public and how can we access them po? Thank you.
Okay, I think you are the second group to see the simulation. We actually have many simulation presented even way back in 2014. What is available are the maps out of the simulation. And we can actually share with you some of the simulation for educational purposes. Now, the simulation can actually be produced by people who have been trained with the use of the REDA software. There's a module called TSIM, Tsunami Simulation Software. And they can actually simulate different magnitudes and depths of earthquake, and they find out what height of the tsunami and arrival time will happen. On the PHIVOLCS side, just so you have an understanding of how we actually monitor and forecast a possible tsunami and identify which areas need to evacuate, we have developed a database with 30,000 tsunami simulation. Out of the simulations that we only showed you some of the simulations for special places in the Philippines.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, one more. There's a question coming from Leslie Common, Barangay Fairview, Quezon City. Tanong po niya, bakit po apektado pati ang bahagi ng Bataan nakaharap sa Pampanga, di naman harap ng trench sa West Philippine Sea?
Okay, magandang
Dapat naglalagay din kayo ng classification ng primary or secondary affected para maintindihan ng klaro kung paano makakaapekto sa lahat ng Pilipinas.
Okay.
Lumalabas lahat pati kasuluk-sulukan ng coastal shore ng Pilipinas, apektado pa rin ng tsunami. Good question, sir. Yan.
Tama po yun. Hindi po yun mali. Primary hazard po yung tsunami. Bakit po? Basta may lulusutan yung tubig, as long as there's a pathway for tsunami to enter, it will enter. For example, the Manila Trend tsunami will enter Manila Bay through the passage Verde Island in Lubang and also to Manila Bay through the Batangas-Cavite area. Pagpasok po ng tsunami doon, they cannot escape right away. There will be many waves. So both coastal cities of Metro Manila, Bulacan, Pampanga, and Bataan facing Manila within the Manila Bay will be affected by a tsunami much later. But those facing the West Philippine Sea from Bataan, Zambales will be affected by a tsunami in a few minutes, in less than 10 minutes. Pareho pong primary hazard yun, hindi po yun secondary hazard. Again, in some other inland areas, yung color blue po, color blue, ito po ay tsunami hazards, but not the trends. Kaya nga kulay blue po yon dahil po sa mga offshore faults and submarine landslide. Kaya nga nagkahiwalay po yun. Yun po yung classification sa threat.
Okay, thank you, sir. So at least as explains, yung po mga pinapakita na map. We have here from, ay kilala niyo, sir, Jake Romkadag, Department of Geography. With the simulations and models we have, should we require all LGUs to identify or mark a higher place in the barangay or municipality where it is safe to evacuate in case of a warning of tsunami? And this is a physical mark like a flag or post with clear marking tsunami safe area or something like that?
Yes, the answer to those questions would be yes. That is why we have recommended tsunami signage. One is the definition of a hazard area. The second would be where the selected, the term that we usually use internationally is tsunami refuge site, or you can call it evacuation site. It's a temporary site. You just need an elevated ground. The only problem is if there's a typhoon and there will be a tsunami. That is really very difficult. So what we need to do is identify an evacuation area that is safe from landslides because of earthquake, and the passage, the route that you should identify to the evacuation area should also be safe from landslide and other earthquake hazards. Because remember, we are dealing not only of a tsunami, but other earthquake hazards that will occur simultaneously. So we need to have the signage. The community can have their own way of identifying the signage at the evacuation site, but we would recommend also putting up signage. They can paint these themselves. And this will be discussed tomorrow morning in a webinar on community preparedness for tsunami. Yung seminar na ready ka ba sa tsunami?
Okay, thank you. And part of it, sir, di ba, marami na rin tayo mga collaborations with local government units about identifying evacuation sites.
Yeah. The question is, how many evacuation sites do you need to develop? Depending on the population, depending on the geography, you can have more than one, right? But not too many, because once there's a real tsunami, we need to actually, well, in the new normal, the better, the more the better. But when it comes to real handling of the crisis, it will be very difficult to handle too many people scattered all over.
Okay, thank you, sir. Two similar questions coming from isa sa FB, isa sa Zoom. From AUP Academy, si Ergeline de la Cruz and si Jerome Dadole naman ng USTP. Ang questions nila, how can we conduct or how to plan and execute a tsunami drill? May flyers tayo, sir.
Yeah, this will also be covered tomorrow morning, but it's just like an earthquake drill. You have to start by responding to an earthquake. Now we have to be alive to escape from a tsunami. We need to be protected from falling objects. So first is we need to prepare for the strong earthquake, do the drop, cover, and hold, and evacuate out of the house or building. And immediately, if there's a threat for tsunami, go to elevated ground away from the shoreline, or if not, like in the city of Manila, select tall and strong buildings to have a vertical evacuation, not horizontal. So those are the things that are done. But to decide which areas will be evacuated or not, which areas are dangerous, you need to look at the hazard map. That is why you can use the Hazard Hunter application to find out which areas, which families need to evacuate, and where you actually designate an evacuation site.
Ayan. And if you want to know more details about how to conduct a tsunami drill, may flyers po tayo available, sir.
And this will also be discussed tomorrow.
Yes, yes. Okay. My question po, I think he's from Jensen, obviously. DC o MPC Patrick James D. Mayol. Hi, Director Yusek Solidum. Yusek po. Is Jensen Sarangani prone to tsunami? Where can we access history of tsunami in the area? Maraming salamat po and mabuhay kayo.
Yes, the answer is yes. We have maps for your places. And the tsunami history of the area, we can provide you. Actually have the given lectures for all the regions way back for the past many years. But if you want to actually know the history of tsunami in the Philippines, we have a tsunami catalog authored by PHIVOLCS staff and led by Dr. Yunila Bautista, who's also the lead for the REDA software. It's available in the website. You just register, and then you can download the history. If you have more questions, you can write us so that we can provide you with detailed information, or if you have questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. One question from Vladimir Duboset, Ginoog, CDRMO. Is there any high possibility of experiencing tsunami even there is no information of fault system in our area? Maybe that's related to isa pa po, sir, no? Question, can tsunamis be triggered by other causes? So,
Okay, especially for those of you who are in the inland coasts away from trenches like Gingoog, the reason why we have placed the blue-colored coastal lines there is that there are cases where strong earthquakes, even inland, can cause submarine landslides. No? And if there are areas that there would be submarine faults that would move vertically, then there can be tsunamis. But the threat of a tsunami for those coastal inland areas will be lesser than those fronting trenches. So kunyari, Gingoog, may threat pa rin kayo, but not as high as those facing the Pacific Ocean, the Celebes Sea, or Sulu Sea, or West Philippine Sea. We are just taking into account the possibility that there can be submarine landslide because there are large faults there that can generate large earthquake events within
yeah.
your region, not nearby your place, but within your region.
Okay. So nasagot pa po yung tanong ni Lino Sambilio Jr., yung ibang triggers ng tsunami.
Okay, yeah. The triggers will be, aside from earthquakes related to trenches, would be submarine landslides and earthquakes related to offshore faults.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ito ay question mula sa ating estudyante, si John Pedro, student ng SPCCF. How far po yung kayang abutin ng tsunami?
Well, the tsunami can, in the Pacific Ocean, if you have a large magnitude earthquake, it can cross the whole Pacific Ocean basin. No? It again depends on the magnitude of the earthquake. So across the Pacific, very, very far, thousands of kilometers. Within the Philippines, for example, if there's a tsunami in the eastern Philippines, along the Philippine Trench, no, facing the Philippine Sea, if, for example, kunyari lang, nasa eastern Philippines, eastern Visayas ang earthquake and tsunami, the whole coastlines in the north, in Cagayan Valley and those further down south, in Davao Oriental area, can be affected by a tsunami. As long as there is energy, the tsunami can enter areas or go to areas north or south, or east or west of the source.
Thank you, sir. Question again. Is it possible na mag-generate din po sa Laguna de Bay ang tsunami?
Okay, actually that is a common question. The Laguna de Bay is a very shallow water. So if, for example, the West Valley Fault will move because it transects the western side of Laguna de Bay, what we think would be the oscillation of lake water. We call it a SEICH, S-E-I-C-H-E, lake water oscillation. No? So there can be waves, but not as like a tsunami, where it will rush towards the shoreline. So the immediate threat in the lake shores of Laguna de Bay would be liquefaction, lalambot po yung lupa, and strong ground shaking.
And another question. I don't think this is his real name kasi nakalagay Clark's Law. Palagay ko ito yung ginamit niya. Hi, sir. Is there or where can we find the hazard map for tsunami, especially here in Region 10?
Okay. The tsunami hazard maps can be sourced from the website of PHIVOLCS, or you can use the Hazard Hunter PH. You can actually just click any area and you can assess the hazard, and you can actually download maps from the Hazard Hunter.
So yun, Yusek, kanina pa po nila binabanggit ni Yusek yung tungkol sa REDAS and sa Hazard Hunters. So I hope try nyo pong i-access para makita nyo po the features. Wala na bang questions, Missy and Hannah, coming in from FB? Hindi ko kasi nakita, sir, yung FB. Any other questions? Meron pa? Okay. So ang sabi sa akin, I think, sir, yun na po ang last of the questions
Okay.
that we have. Yes, sir. Any other additional comments from you, sir, before we proceed?
Okay. Remember, I showed you one of the apps that we just developed, Report a Disaster. So maybe for those of you who are here and our media friends, we'd also like to request you to actually inform the public that they can report a disaster through that um, uh, application, so that we'll be able to know immediately what is happening, and this can be shared to other agencies. Plus, this will be used for application for improving of the risk assessment or forecasting the possible impact. This will be shared with other government agencies and the academe who would need those information. Um, uh, Bitly, report disaster.
Wait, okay, we have to share the slide first. Iko-close na po natin. But before we really close the program, unahin ko muna yung announcement. People are requesting po ng group photo. Sandali po. Okay. So again, I would like to remind all of you, ating pong mga kasama ngayon, ito pong World Tsunami Awareness Day. Umpisa pa lang ngayong umaga. Later this afternoon, we'll be having with us Robilyn Mangahas to talk about tsunami hazards and risks in the Philippines. Ang kanyang title ay Baybayin ng Pinas sa Tsunami Diligtas. And then tomorrow, we will be having Engineer Erlington Olavere to talk about Tsunami Ready Ka Na Ba? So ito po sila, ang ating announcement card for them. We would like to invite all of you to please listen to these lectures. Very significant po. Lalo na po yung ating mga kasama ngayong umaga. Maganda po mapanood. And makikita rin po siya sa FB. And we also would like to announce, si Yusek po then I invited to a webinar organized by the Office of Civil Defense. Webinar on tsunami preparedness. That will be on November 10, 2020. Sa announcement po nila, sir, walang oras. May time na po ba to?
November 10 is in the morning.
Morning daw. Okay,
Yes.
sir. So, and that is actually in preparation for the NSED, Nationwide Simultaneous Earthquake Drill,
So
sa November 12. Yeah.
And Eileen,
Yes, sir.
huwag natin kalimutan, for the Department of Science and Technology, we will have the first ever virtual National Science and Technology Week, November
Yes, sir.
23 to 29. So if you're interested in technologies for disasters, for COVID, for kabuhayan, livelihood, for health, kalusugan, for education, kinabukasan, and of course, disaster and law and order, yung kaayusan will be there. And for PHIVOLCS and Pag-asa, we will be having a webinar for everyone related to various hazards. Please check also the DOST website and social media for the details. But PHIVOLCS will also be posting the announcement in the future, in the immediate future.
Okay, before we finally end, may we request all of our guests this morning sa Zoom to please turn on your video for the the usual photo. Ganun yung group picture natin. Sino magko-cue? Daini o Lucy?
Si Daini po yung kukuha video. So kung ready na po tayo.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Sandali, wala akong video. So I have to show my face. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Next.
4 na panels po kasi. So, smile lang for all throughout.
1, 2, 3. Ilan na, Daini? Dali po. Yan. Next po. Next na. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Yun na po yung last. Marami pong salamat. Ay, meron pa daw isa. Sige.
Sorry.
Another. Okay,
Apat na
wala lang
pala.
naka-open na camera daw. Sige po. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you po.
So that ends our InfoSentro for this month. Kailan kaya yung susunod? We will give you an announcement for that. Pero again, we'd like to thank all of you. Sa ngalan po ng PHIVOLCS, ng mga kasama ko na nag-organize nito, kami po ay nagpapasalamat sa inyong lahat sa pagdalo. And congratulations to all the winners. Sir, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, if you're interested for your school or for your community to engage us for preparedness, awareness, just write PHIVOLCS, and we will schedule with you your requested activity.
Thank you, JICA Philippine Office for, again, gracing the occasion. Every year kasama namin sila. Maraming salamat po.
Yes. For the evaluation po, may nakapost po na link. Please check po the evaluation. Please answer. Thank you po.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your participation in our activity this morning. I would like to invite you again to join us later in the afternoon at 1:30 p.m. to attend the PHIVOLCS InfoVit webinar, Baybayin ng Pinas sa Tsunami Diligtas. Marami pong salamat. See you later.